Hello, friends. In the series of learning computer organization and design, today we are going to focus upon the topic of modes of transfer, which is coming under the input output organization. So, before beginning, as usual, we will start with the overview. We have already covered the peripheral devices, the input output interface, and the asynchronous data transfer. So today our focus is purely on what are the various modes of transfer are available when we want to transfer the data from the peripherals or the IO devices to the CPU or from the CPU to the memory. So this is what we are going to focus upon. So let's start learning about this concept in more detail. So, in the introduction part of this modes of transfer, here is a one point that I would like to discuss with all of you. The point is that why do we need to learn about this topic, right? Why we are learning modes of transfer? Definitely, there would be certain types or certain number of modes in which we can transfer the data, okay? But the first point is that from which particular device to which particular device we can transfer the data. So for let's clear the background and on then we will focus upon this topic. The background statement says that we are having the peripheral devices or IO devices, right? So we know that IOs are also known as the peripherals. So point is when the peripherals are there, okay, and they want to take any input or they want to transfer any data to the machine, then basically what happens is that as we have learned in the previous chapters that the IO instructions are basically being used. Remember the chapter when we were learning about the basic computer organization, there was a one type of instruction which was the input output instructions. Now, in that particular chapter, I explained you that the input output instructions are the one which basically demands that any of the input unit or output unit, okay, want to take the excess of the memory. So, what happens is that the ultimate or the sole purpose is that all the IO instructions will be executed, or their entire purpose is to reach this memory unit. But what happens is that just because these peripherals are very slow devices in comparison to the memory or the processor, right? So we cannot directly provide the access to the main memory. So what happens is that so information from these peripheral devices sometimes been shared with the CPU, okay, and from the CPU it is taken to the memory unit. So the idea is that this CPU sometimes act as the intermediate agent, okay, to make the transfer successful. So this is the entire point been written here in these points. So the binary information received from the external device is usually stored in the main memory. So this is what the point is, okay. So information transferred from the central computer to the external device always been originated in the main memory. That is the again the same point is it is. So what happened is that it is not the CPU who has to execute the IO instructions, but the ultimate source or the destination for performing or for processing the IO instructions is the memory unit. This was the point I was explaining you earlier, right? Now, this point is important. Data transfer between the central computer and IO devices may be handled in a variety of modes. Now, as I said, it could be the case that it is acting as an intermediary, okay. First of all, the peripheral will send the data to the processor, and from the processor only the data will be sent again or the forwarded to the memory unit, and this is how the entire data transfer will take place, okay. But sometimes it's always the case, it can also be the case that directly we can also give the access to the IO devices to the main memory, because not all the IO devices are actually being considered as the slower one. If we take the example of the storage components like the flash drives, like the SSDs or even the magnetic disks. We can consider them, these are also the fast devices, okay, which are operating on some another mechanisms which allow them to work or to process in a faster manner. So such kind of devices we can provide a direct access to the main memory also. So that is why we are having three basic types or the broad categories of the modes of the transfer available. So the very first one is the programmed input output. Second is just the advanced version of the program input output. We called it as interrupt initiated input output. Okay. And the third one is there direct memory access. As I said earlier, directly we can provide the access to the memory. So this is the third one. So in this entire session, we are going to learn about these three modes in more detail. And for your information, let me tell you that these two modes are basically referring that the IO devices will communicate with the processor. Okay, but here the IO device will have a direct access to the memory unit or the main memory. So this is the basic point. For these two, what we are having is the access is from the IO devices to the processor in the programmed input output and in interrupt initiated. But in case of direct memory access, as the name simplifies, the IO devices has a direct access to the main memory. So let's start learning about these three modes of transfer in more detail. So here is the very first one, programmed input output. So some sort of programmed input outputs are there. So these programmed input output operations are basically derived from the input output instructions which are being provided to the computer, right? So point is that the transfer is to and from the CPU register and the peripheral. Now the very first point here is that in the programmed input output, I will be having a CPU at one side and the peripherals at the another side. Now what will happen in between these two, I am having the interface available. Okay, so the data transfer will take place in this manner only. So what will happen in this case of programmed input output, what will happen in the case, the first point is the data will be transferred in the asynchronous manner. Means we will be getting the acknowledgement signal within that, and there is a data valid signal also being generated, and the CPU will always be or the continuously monitoring this interface for getting the input from this IO devices. So this is what the point is, the basic point. So let's understand it from the block diagram so that you could have a better clarity of the point. This is the programmed input output mode. As I said earlier, on one side there is a CPU and on another side there is a IO device. So the mode of transfer is basically it is asynchronous. So what will happen in asynchronous data transfer mode? Some data from the peripheral device will be placed on the data bus. Now in this IO bus, we know that we have already learned in the concept when I was explaining you the interfaces. The IO bus is responsible for carrying the data, for carrying the addresses, and for carrying the controlled commands. Okay, so that's why I have written that whatsoever the data the I want from the memory, right, it would be taken on this IO bus only. Through the IO bus, it will reach to the interface and will get stored here in this data register. As soon as the data will be placed here in this data register or IO bus, so what will happen? The data valid signal will also get activated. Okay. Now, in this interface, what we are having? We are having one, which is the data register. Okay. The second is the status register, which will depict the kind of status of the device, whether it is active or what kind of status it is holding, the device is ready to send the data or whatever the point is, right? Along with this status register, we are using a flag bit. The flag bit will simply specifies whether there is something present in the status register or not. Like if the flag bit is 0, it means nothing is available in the status register. If the flag bit is equals to 1, then some data is present. Your processor need to refer to the values or whatever the command been available here in the status register and have to act accordingly. Okay. So the CPU will continuously have its focus on this flag bit because this is flag bit is playing a very important role in order to make this entire data transfer a successful kind of operation. Okay. So furthermore, depending upon the value of the status register, the data will be taken from this data register and will placed on the data bus. Okay. Similarly, its address would also be fetched from the interface to which particular address we need to refer and within the memory and all such data. And then the read and write operation for this status will also be taken care by the CPU, and then furthermore the CPU will further forward this request to the memory unit. So the role play of the programmed input output actually works from in between these two things only. Okay, so this is the flow chart of depicting the operations that your programmed input output is able to perform. So always it starts from reading the data register. So if you remember, there was a data register available in the programmed input output mode, right? So that data register will have to take. Now this what to do with this data? Where to take this data? All the information is actually available here in this status register. So in order to read the value of status register, we need to refer to the flag bits. So this is the next point. After reading the data in the data register, now is the point to read the flag bit. So what is this flag? Flag was that F. Okay. If the flag bit is equals to 0, so means nothing is available in the status register. Let's switch back to the reading the data. This is what the processor will do. Okay. Furthermore, if there is some data available, flag bit is active, then only the processor will read the status register, and then the data which is available here in this data register will be taken to the memory by the processor. Now, after reading the status register, the CPU will again check whether the operation is complete or some more information is coming in this data register. If the process is completed, then it will start working with the another program. So we are simply talking about the functionality of the processor here. Okay, how the processor looks at the data which is available in the interface. So if the operation is not yet completed, some data is more data is available in the data register, then again the CPU will start reading the data in the data register, and will the again the entire process will keep on continuing. So I hope that you have understood the idea. Again, I am going to just skimming the things. This programmed input output flow chart, this functionality is entirely based on the functionality of the processor. Okay, the processor will read the data, it will check the flag bit. If something is available in the flag bit, then it will check the status register. Then only the data will be transferred from this data register to the processor, and again it will check whether the operation is completed. If completed, then CPU will carry on with the other programs. If it is not completed, it will completely be in a loop to wait for the another data present here and to wait for the status registers value to get activated, all these things. So it will keep in the loop until or unless the entire execution of the data from the peripheral and within the processor has taken place. So this is how entirely this programmed input output works. Now, when we learned about this programmed input output, you can observe that the CPU have to be in a loop until the IO unit is indicating that the data is available in the data transfer. Okay. Whenever the data will be available in the data transfer, means some data in the data register, then definitely The CPU has to keep its entire focus on this interface value only and to keep on checking the flag bit only. So it means that it is consuming a lot of the time of the processor, because even if the data is available in the data register, but the flag bit is not active, flag bit is 0, your CPU has to keep its eye on this as well as on this flag bit only. It means the CPU's a lot of time is basically getting wasted here. So without any need, we are wasting the time. And you know why this particular case arises? It's only because we are simply depending upon the input being generated by any of the peripheral device. It might be the case that peripheral is very slow and it is very slowly putting the data here, and accordingly the entire the interface values are getting activated. Okay, so the point is that this was the basic limitation, that a lot of CPU's time is being wasted in this programmed input output mode. So what happened? We have provided a solution to this problem. So, what was the solution? We have introduced an interrupt facility and some special commands. Okay, so that's why the another method, the another mode is called as the interrupt input output or interrupt initiated input output mode. So let's understand about that interrupt initiated mode. So in this interrupted IO, this was the second mode of data transfer. So usually this method is helping the processor to reduce its wait time. This was the sole purpose behind introducing this interrupted IO. So what it will do? It will use an interrupt facility as well as some special commands which will inform the interface to issue an interrupt request when the data is available from the device. Means CPU need not to be keep in the loop until or unless the data is arriving. Okay, there is no wait time. Once the data will came or available within the interface, only then the interface will issue an interrupt request to the processor. And what the processor will do, the processor whatsoever the job it is doing, it will just resume, it will just pause that particular job and will start looking at this branch and looking at handling this interrupt request, and accordingly it will start functionality. Okay, the rest all procedure will remain same as that of the programmed input output data transfer. The only thing is that we have added now this interrupt facility. Okay, so this is the basic point. So upon detecting the external interrupt signal, the processor or the CPU momentarily stops the task it is processing, and now it is using the BSA instruction here. Branches to a service program to process the IO transfer. ठीक है ना? What the processor will do? Processor will simply halt its operation and will look at this interrupt request and will start working on this interrupt request. It will generate a subroutine here, and what will happen, and after performing this process, then it will again return to the task it was originally performing. Once this subroutine is handled, this IO interrupt is handled, then again CPU will resume its task from where it actually leaves. So this is how entirely this interrupt initiated IO will work. So now is the third point, which is the direct memory access. This direct memory access is very important. So we will have a separate session on understanding the DMA also. For the time being, I am just going to tell you in a theoretical manner what is the meaning of the term direct memory access and how does this process takes place. So this is the only thing I have included in this session because we will learn it in detailed manner in the upcoming session. So basically, what happens is when we talk about the programmed input output, I said the data will be transferred only between the CPU and the peripherals. But in case of DMA, as I stated in the first slide also, the interface transfers the data into and out of the memory unit through a memory bus. So what it will do, DMA will have the facility to work on the memory bus so that the peripheral and the main memory can have a direct access. Okay, so what happens in this case, and how does this entire process takes place? So always the CPU initiates such kind of transfer. Okay, the involvement of CPU will remain here. What it will do, the CPU will supply the interface with the start address as well as the words to be processed. Okay, we know that in the memory the data is stored in the form of words. So what the CPU will do, CPU, there is a CPU in between and there is a peripheral IO device. The CPU will let these IO devices know about how many words to be processed from the memory. Okay, and it will also provide the start address from where the execution of this data or the memory unit will actually have to take place. Then what will happen in the second case, after taking the entire information, the DMA requests memory cycle through the memory bus. So it will request that I need a memory cycle. Okay, how it will taken, there is a memory bus been there, through the memory bus only it will now request that I need to execute the data directly from the memory. So what it will do, it will take the memory cycle, so definitely it has to work with the memory cycle now. Then when the request is been granted, then only the DMA will start directly transferring the data to the memory. So the idea is that whenever the IO says I want to have a direct access to the main memory, CPU never delays. CPU directly provides this. Okay, merely delays its memory access operation to allow the direct memory access. But what happens is that just because the peripheral devices are slower than the CPU, such kind of operations are very infrequent in comparison to the processor access to the memory. Okay, that's why DMA is existing and is actually very expensive kind of technology also. But what happened is that such kind of operations are taken very lesser amount of time to access the to have a direct access to the memory. So this was all about the three modes of of transferring the data, either from the processor to the main memory from the IO devices. I hope that you have understood today's session. Thank you so much for watching the session.